Good afternoon, and welcome to this week's What Comes Next Live, coming to you as per normal at Tuesday, 5 p.m. UK time. And both of us are in the borough of Croydon this week. My guest this week is the amazing Susanette Mansour, who is, she can tell you her formal title, but she leads a old and very well established charity in Croydon called Croydon Vision. I was introduced to Susanette a few months ago and asked to sit in on a staff offsite. And I was truly inspired by the people I met and the direction she was taking the charity. So we've met a few times since to see where I can assist in one or two ways. But I thought she must be a guest on What Comes Next Live, which is all about inspiring leaders. So having bigged you up enough, just to begin with, Susanette, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Tom. I definitely love the title that I have. It was given to me by our team members because I just find chief exec is just, it's a samey kind of title. So I am called the Catalyst at work, which is lovely. I love that title. And I added it because my why is about transformation. So I say a catalyst for transformation. I'm Susanette. I was born in Sierra Leone, West Africa. So I'm grateful to have lived part of my life in West Africa and more like my young adult life in the UK. So I absolutely love the two worlds in the sense of understanding what life and the perspectives of life and being appreciative of life brings in those two scenarios. So I grew up whereby we had civil war. And so I was 15 and had to leave everything behind and to rebuild life again. And so yeah, it brings a lot of perspective when you think about what's going on in Ukraine and a lot of things that we see. And yes, it makes you appreciate what you have. And I've always loved about digging for gold in people, like looking at an individual and being able to walk a journey with them and seeing something they probably haven't seen themselves and being able to be part of that journey. And hence where my why is all about transforming lives, people to live with intent and purpose. I love the podcast. I've listened to a number of them and learned a lot because I am a sponge. I love to learn. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward for us having a conversation and learn from each other and also hopefully add value to other people as well.
Wonderful. You're absolutely in line with what I love about talking to people, is to have some shared learnings and a bit of energy and inspiration. So you're a change catalyst. Perhaps if we narrow in on something, the charity, you can tell us how old the charity is and what it does, and then perhaps talk about your anchor that you have around the heart and mindset piece.
Yeah, so Croydon Vision has been going on for 99 years. It's our centenary next year. I wasn't part of it, obviously, from birth, from formed. And when I came there in 2018, a lovely charity, very insular, very much more older people kind of organization, which in many ways, sight loss is predominantly older people. The thing is, there were also younger people, and we wanted to harness and be more inclusive. And so there were some activities for younger people, but it was very much fun activities, that sort of thing. And what we were looking at is how do we tailor a life skill, transformation, equipping and empowering individuals. And so for the last number of years, we've rebranded, reevaluate what the organization is, and having the heart of members being part of that, and volunteers as well as staff and trustees and partners, which is where I met Tom, as well as a good friend of ours, Gordon, who introduced us.
Who will be on the podcast in 2 weeks' time.
Good, he did say. So we have created this 5-step program, and it's all about changing perceptions and changing perspective of individuals looking at themselves and just thinking there isn't life anymore after sight loss, and taking them on a journey and saying, well, actually there can be, and people getting into employment, being able to challenge the status quo, and inclusivity, making sure people feel more community cohesion, community cohesion, being more promotion of it. And through all that process, during pandemic period, listening to various different individuals, my colleagues talking about life and what's happening, I started to ask lots of why questions. I love why. Why is this way? And the heart of a charity and mindset of a business that started to birth. And I didn't have language for it, but I knew there was something that could be harnessed where the two worlds can marry each other and create a stronger, more enhanced organization. And so for the last year, we've been piloting Heart of a Charity, Mindset of a Business. And it's all about how we harness the heart, in how we work together in transforming people's lives, as well as making sure the organization is sustainable for the next 100 years. And bringing those two together. And I need all the help I can with having people and expertise around me to make it happen.
I loved it when I heard that. And when I went to that offsite that Gordon asked me to go to because he was away, first of all, it was a really interesting experience for me to sit for the whole day and just listen. All right, because I'm quite used to being at the front of the room in some shape or form. But I listened to, and I met a number of your volunteers, a number of your team, stakeholders, and the words that came up for me were words like proud and empowered. And I learned a lot just in that day about what it means to be vision impaired or have sight loss.
Yeah.
And for example, how many people do not walk around with a white cane and consciously choose not to. And I think there's something, you talk about being a catalyst for transformation. You and I have worked in that a little bit about talking to businesses about partnering, rather than thinking of charitable contributions as being a box in the budget that's benevolent and kind. There's I think a color adjective used around the pound towards charities and the spending power of people with different disabled needs and stuff. And you can talk about that in a second. But I'm just connecting to the fact that the charity itself, to thrive for the next 100 years, like many charities, it will be very important to be more business-like so it can scale its impact. And we've talked about that. But also that recognition for those business partners who may well fund and finance the charity at enhanced levels is also linked to the fact that you are there about transforming the lives, and the word empower comes up again, which is about empowering the vision, those with sight loss, those who are vision impaired. And having met several of them, and a lot of them are in your different videos and things like this, it is just quite remarkable how people work with the challenges presented by sight loss, and what on that, as you say, 5-step journey, they can move through the different stages to whatever level of empowerment they can achieve, and whatever works for them as individuals. So.
Yeah, no, certainly. And yes, and you've helped in that, Tom, in terms of, because sometimes you're thinking and there's something birthing and the language might not fully be there. And then I remember I knew that we don't want to be an organization and a charity that just goes to a business and say, help us, or give us some change. To me, it's always about partnership, and it's about creating a win-win situation, or win-win threefolds in a sense. And so when you and I were brainstorming afterwards and we're talking, and I was like, yeah, that is right. It's about how can we help you? It's good. It's good for businesses nowadays. So how can we work together, but actually make it tangible, whereby they're seeing tangible results? And for me, the 5-step model is about that. It's about celebrating every step as a win rather than waiting to get to the mountaintop.
Right.
And I love that, whereby you see someone coming in despair or wherever they are at, and being able to take them through the rebuilding stage, and then to redirecting, and then upskilling, and then applying their skills, and then from survival to thriving. So every step is celebrated, and that then the team sees that, the member sees it, the individual sees it, and what businesses who wants to partner with us can see that as well. So, and when you mentioned about people with sight loss, the lessons I've learned so much with working in the sight loss sector is just the resilience in people,
Right.
but that also takes someone walking alongside them, because there are many who could just kind of come into a state of despair, there's nothing left for me. But when you walk alongside with them and show them examples and templates of others who've done and been there and walk that journey, it's amazing to see what happens. And I just love it.
So it's particularly resonant for me right now. Sorry if I pause for a moment. I lost a close family member yesterday. After quite a long period where they're older and they were struggling with disease, but it was actually a very short illness, and it reminds me of the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model of 5 stages of grief. And there are 5 stages that we work through, and it is interesting because that first element is, and I've met some of the people, and you've talked to me around some more, is that sometimes sight loss, it's such a pivotal sense for how we tend to operate as humans in the modern world. And that the word you've used before is despair. And so helping people take each step and celebrate each step is transformative. And at whatever level they get, so you move through those stages is the bottom line, the 5 stages in a different way. And then life, just as with grief, life eventually moves on, and people will move on in their own way, and they will have to go through each of those 5 stages, sometimes several times in different ways. And it's not always linear. It's not always 5 stages in orderly fashion. Sometimes you go backwards a little bit and you might get another moment or two. So having somebody alongside you, whether it's in a stage of grief or whether it's moving through the journey as a human with sight loss, it's very powerful. And the piece I was going to ask you to talk about, which links into all of this, is this idea of the purple pound. And what does that mean? And for example, without going to specific businesses, what does it mean in retail? How can, and this thing about partnering is not just, can you give us some money as a charity, but how can we, like you said at the very beginning about the podcast, how can we learn from each other? How can we share learnings? And I know you've been doing it for a while now, but I wonder how it's been landing when you have those conversations with businesses and go, we would love your help and we'd like to partner with you, and perhaps we can help you, and with the purple pound.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Tom. And yes, grief can be, it has different stages for sure. In relation to the purple pound, it's one of those concepts which I wasn't clear aware, and this is one of the things that the more you talk about your vision, the more people will bring in nuggets for you, and then you're like, okay, let me go research that a bit more. So I found out about it, and I went and researched, and what it is the amount of missed opportunities by businesses due to lack of inaccessible websites or physically their shops and places that they sell items, because disabled people don't go into these shops or go on their website because it's inaccessible. And for someone with sight loss, it's even more so. And so what we are talking about is saying, look, we have almost 800 members and family and friends, and you are likely missing out on these individuals going into your shops, because if your website or your workplace is not accessible for them, not only will they not go, they will also tell their family and friends, their colleagues and their peers at Croydon Vision. And so what we want to do is partner with businesses and work together with them. Just last week, we had a session with a business of visual awareness workshop. And the idea of the visual awareness workshop is where we can either go into an office space of a business, or they come to us. Either way, we're flexible at it, and provide a team building exercise whereby they get to brainstorm and discuss what sight loss is about, and few other disabilities as well. So in essence, it's about becoming more inclusive, more aware. And in doing that, we also provide the nugget of what's the information that you need to apply this now in your workplace. What are the little tips and tricks of making things accessible? And some can be quick wins, some are medium, and some are long-term plan, but we walk that journey with the businesses. In turn, we create more awareness about sight loss in the business world. It also becomes an income stream for the organization, and those funds go back into us supporting individuals into employment who have sight loss. So again, this is the win-win-win approach.
Multiple layers of wins, yeah.
Exactly.
The idea of putting it, a bit more bluntly in business, there's a business imperative for people to, this product you've developed of visual awareness workshops can be done online, can be done in person, etc. And this doesn't come out of the charity budget. This comes out of your marketing and business development budget. This is something which develops that. And one of the things that occurred to me, and I've spoken to you about, is that charities, there is the idea of, being local, but thinking and acting bigger than that, thinking maybe global, but maybe national. And there was one national business that is reasonably close to your geographic location that we were talking about. This is a major retailer, and they're actually very successful. And one of the things they're known for is that it's quite difficult to find stuff in their stores. They want people to venture around them, and they'll constantly change the merchandising. So if you go in one week after the other, the product that you were looking for last time will be in a different location. Now, it's a conscious decision they have to have people discuss, like, I'm the kind of, okay, I'm going to be a bit gender biased here. I'm the kind of man who purchases, I don't shop. I walk in, if it's not on the list, I'll never find it, right? But if I go into that shop, I'll end up finding other things because they're deliberately targeting people like me who will like, oh, I bumped into that, trying to find the other thing. And if you imagine went into them, I'm just brainstorming for a moment, and you did an experiential workshop in person, and you explained to them where 3 products were, and then you put blindfolds on people.
Yeah.
And then before they got to go and find those products and say, oh, it's quite simple. It's 6 steps forward and 2 steps to the left, and there it is. And they go there, they pick up the product, and it's a different product. And you go, that's what it's like going to your store every week. And then the quick win for them could be as simple as they deliberately have people in those stores walking the aisles so that people ask them questions and they can direct them to things and maybe say, have you thought about this? Well, if those people have visual awareness training, the second somebody comes in who may not have a guide dog or a white cane and says, I'm visually impaired, I have sight loss, I need to find ABC product. And they go, I'm trained on that, or my colleague is, and I can bring them to see you. So I'm just talking it through a little bit, but it's like, it's where this stuff is recognizing. It's also I imagine it's quite empowering for either the person delivering the workshop, from your community of people with visual impairment, and just anybody in there knowing you're partnering with such and such a retail company to know, they're seeing that we are not on the periphery of society. We have spending power, we have the purple pound, and we're relevant. We are, to use this sort of, it just is the word that comes to me, they are seen.
Yes, which is the right word, actually, seen. And I think the other parts to it as well is whereby a lot of times we get the feedback from our members, which are, service users, that businesses, because they don't understand much about sight loss, they will constructively dismiss someone out of work because that individual is not performing the way they obviously expect them to perform. What they don't know is that what sort of probing questions that could be asked to understand the individual more, as well as what adaptable technology that can be used, and that person can perfectly do their work or even more. I mean, the individual who does our visual awareness workshop, her name's Odette, brilliant, we call her community dynamo. She's visually impaired. Yet she was at Central London last week doing a visual awareness workshop, and the feedback has been great, you know. And so they're more than capable of doing the work. It's just that they need support in terms of enhancing and supporting their work. And also sometimes they need support worker. And what we want to do is really highlight that and create a level of awareness for businesses, so they're aware that you don't have to move someone from one post to the next just because they're visually impaired. It might be sometimes that it might be required, but you can adapt, and you don't have to lose the individual or that skill set or the experience they can bring into that business, which can enrich it further, you know. And the notion of just, they're not performing and so they've got to go. It's more saying to businesses today, you know, do talk to us, because we can assist in that. We can come in and we can support and we can assess and work with that individual to enable them to have the materials and equipment that they need, because sometimes they don't even know themselves. They are at the stage where they haven't yet acknowledged, sight loss. They're still kind of saying, no, it's just a day, my eyes is still okay, it's, you know, it's the lighting or it's this. They haven't reached a place to acknowledge that they have sight loss, and we can help that business to support that individual and them not losing their work, and you not losing that vital skill that they have.
I remember at that away day a number of months ago that at the table, the round table I was sat at, Odette was at that table. And she is a firebrand. She is your community dynamo. She's full of energy. And at this sort of table conversations, I learned an awful lot. Now there are different, and my level of awareness around sight loss was very low. And I learned so much in the first half day, including like look at the aids that some of the people have, including Odette, to help them read things with big magnification and stuff like this and lights, etc. But also then I sat down at lunch opposite two people, and one of them clearly had sight loss, but I didn't realize that they were almost fully blind. Right? They had no awareness I was sitting in front of them. Right. But I'd learned enough in the day that when we were all going back to the tables, they had a bag and they had a jacket and this kind of thing, and they had to maneuver their way back to their seat. And by this time we'd been talking, and instead of saying, let me help you with that, I said, would you like my help with that? And what would you, and then they said, yes. I said, what would you like help with? Because I'd learned in the morning that that's a much more empowering way of handling it. You're not making them forgive the old phrase, charity case. You're actually empowering them to make their choices as to what level of support they need. And, you know, I just came away from that day. I mean, I was in the middle of chemotherapy, right? I was, you know, it wasn't a bad day for me. But I was exhausted afterwards, but I had this weird feeling of both being exhausted and super energized at the same time. And so I find myself on this conversation just sharing a lot for the audience of things that I'd learned. And this reminds me of a mentor I had years ago who used to sign off every email with the line, awareness is the greatest agent for change. And this both resonates for me for the people at the early stages of your 5-stage process, where they're not either fully aware or admitting to the awareness that they have sight loss, but also for people bluntly like me who feel fairly accomplished in business and going, this is not my community. I've not fully understood it. So first of all, just kudos to you and the whole community and organization for the changes you are creating, but also in a space of leadership, for I sat on the train on the way back from a meeting in London today, talking to a 6-year-old about prime numbers with his mother, I hasten to add, and just remembering that, and his 3-year-old sister was there, and just remembering there was nothing like a 3-year-old for asking why. And I love the fact that you're a few years older than 3, and you ask why a lot, and you're a sponge. But within that, it's that you as that catalyst for transformation that comes from asking questions. And how can we do? What can we really do? How can we do this? Why are we doing it this way? And just I think you're. I did say at the beginning you're a pretty inspirational human being, and it's my favorite visual for business is what's called a virtuous circle, where the arrows just go around in a circle, and at the top it says inspire, and at the bottom it says be inspired. So I imagine being the catalyst for transformation for Croydon Vision is both a matter of inspiring others and being inspired by them. And then I guess my challenge to you is, which I've talked to you about before, but it's also for the audience, is who else can you help? And who else can you learn from outside of Croydon and outside of vision impairment? And, I think a lot of leaders and a lot of charities and other businesses could talk to you and learn first about vision impairment, secondly, about being a charity with the heart of a charity and mindset of a business. And third, just if they're the kind of people who ask a lot of questions, they're the kind of people that would probably benefit from a conversation with Susanette. So,
thank you, Tom. I always say this, that I sit on the shoulders of many giants. There are many people in my life who have enriched my life and helped me grow. And I suppose fundamentally, all of this comes to growth, and growth starts from within yourself. And so I love growth, and I've always been a bookworm. When I was young, I'm still young. When I was little, I used to just sit under a tree and read books. And I've always been that way. I love books, as you can see behind my shoulder.
For the benefit of the podcast audience and those who may have this video and be visually impaired, she's sitting in front of a bookcase full of books.
Yes, so I love books, and it's one of the questions I always ask. I was at a conference a few weeks ago, and loved the speaker. And later on, everyone was rushing to one side to go have a conversation. I literally went to him and I was like, "Okay, so I've got some questions. Can I have 5 minutes of your time?" And the conversation went longer than 5 minutes. So I'm always, and I, even yourself, Tom, just learning. I love to learn. I love to have meaningful conversations with intent. So for me, and that's my purpose, which I'm grateful that I know it and I'm walking in it, and I love it. I love what I do. I really have a passion to work with charitable organizations and businesses to blend, to bridge the gap of those two worlds, because in many ways it feels like there's this whole gap, and one feels they're helping the other and one feels they're asking the other, rather than a blended approach. And so the vision I have is working with both worlds and bringing, bridging more of the gap by working with others as well, yourselves and many others that I work with. And getting voluntary organizations to understand that you got to change your A game. Like, the world of just because I'm a charity, help me out. You need to rethink that. And because it is a business, whether you want to say it boldly or not, it is a business. It's transactional. And so that's my vision, is to work with voluntary organizations and look at how to become more sustainable. But by asking those questions, what we're doing today, is it still relevant? What do we need to keep, stop, or start doing? and then start a conversation that will bring voices out. And sometimes the voices that you hear the loudest are generally not, they're good, but you want to hear from others. And so when I talked at the beginning, I love to dig for gold. I just love sometimes to just sit down and listen. And it's amazing the nuggets you get. I mean, that away day, the amount of things that came out of that day, I was buzzed so much. I had pain with an ankle injury that I was recovering from. Intellectually though, I was buzzing, and the pain was just like, whatever, let's just carry on this, so it was really good. And so and working with businesses as well, challenging their status quo, but most importantly, creating awareness that they may not have, because that world of corporate has always been about bottom line and everything that relates to that, rather than a blended approach of having meaning in life, meaning of why you do what you do, and feeling enriched every day by doing it.
Yep. Perfect. So I have this model that I call open leadership, which has 4 attributes, which really sit in 2 pairs. The first pair of attributes are to be brave and hungry as a leader, which on their own, in say the business world, could have toxic ramifications. But the second pair are to be open and humble. And another word around that is curious. Like there's always more to learn. And linked to that, some blogs I've been writing my daily post recently, linked to a thought that I've really articulated more in recent years, is I've never believed in coincidence.
Yeah.
I believe that you create space for serendipities to occur. So you've just talked about the shoulders of giants and the many people you've learned from, all of whom I imagine, just like I feel, you've taught things to. But it's not a coincidence that you end up again and again being introduced to or meeting people that you get buzzed by, whether it's within Croydon Vision or other people you talk to, because you create space for serendipities by being curious. And I think if there's one lesson I'd like to leave people for that I take from talking to you for half an hour, is that be open, be curious, be humble. And it won't be luck when you start meeting people in business and life that are the right people for you to talk to. So.
Definitely. And your environment is so important for that. Association is key in everything in life, so yeah, definitely. And curiosity, yes, I was always a curious child. And it's interesting because when I was a child, I'll say that, not younger. When I was a child, asking questions was almost not encouraged as much. And so in some ways it dimmed my curiosity, and I relearned and redeveloped that and go like, actually, yeah, I do want to ask, I do want to know. And it's to learn. So there's always an intent as to being curious. It's to learn. It's to, how can I then use that and add value into someone else's life, and yeah, so I love that. And brave and hungry. Yeah, definitely. I mean, in this world and age, boldness, I love. Yeah, you've got to have the courage, and you can test, you fail, learn, grow from it.
Perfect. So what closing thoughts do you have for our audience?
So we were talking today, my team and I were talking today, we did a book club, because that's something we love to do, to learn, again, the learning parts to myself. And they introduced a new book, and conversation came into it, and we're talking about a new kind of diversity, generational diversity. And we were just kind of exploring what that means, and having in society today where you can have 5 different generations working in the same place. What does that mean, and how you can harness that? And I love that conversation. I don't know, have you heard about it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm involved with looking at the third age, and what does that mean for people 50, 60, 70 plus, and what do they have to bring? So I think it's actually wonderful that with the utter lack of diversity in a lot of areas we've experienced in our lives, at least the awareness that things like racial diversity and sexuality diversity and other things are now forefront, it's fantastic because now the circles are rippling and we look at things like generational diversity. So
Yeah,
that's a great topic for people to look at, isn't it? That's today's thought from Susanette.
that it is today's thought and how we harness it, and be more aware of the different dynamics that involves in it, the highs and the lows, and learning the in-betweens of it. Yes.
Perfect. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being the guest on the show today.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, listeners, for having me. Thank you very much.